Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack for Business podcast.
Question for you in the audience. Why isn't your brand message landing with the people you need to reach? And how do you fix it so your marketing actually converts? That's exactly what Brittany will tackle, showing you how to sharpen your brand's voice, craft elegant strategies, and negotiate smarter so every effort drives connection and measurable results. Our guest today is Brittany Hansen from Vision. She is an internationally recognized marketing strategist and thought leader who helps brands speak with clarity, elegance, and measurable impact. As Chief Strategy Officer at Vision, she blends global expertise in branding, digital strategy, and contract negotiations to drive meaningful connection and large scale conversion. Beyond boardrooms and campaigns, Brittany's competitive edge shines on the mats. She recently competed at the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu World Championship in Las Vegas, proof she brings some of the same discipline and grit to every challenge she tackles. Brittany, welcome. Please don't throw us. And do you have a favorite quote or saying?
Do. I actually have so many I love to read. I'm an avid reader, but my favorite right now is a Simon Sinek quote. He says, "Leadership is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge."
So when people launch their brand and they go, I've got a great idea, I've got a business, what's the most common branding mistake they make that makes them invisible to their audience, to their ideal client?
I think probably the largest mistake is calling it good with a website. We are hiring an SEO team and saying, look, I've created this website and now people can find me, and just assuming that's the best way to go. It's, it
Yikes.
it leaves a lot to be asking for.
Or we could go back to 1995. That would work.
You know, I'm not in many ways, marketing has. I don't know if you've noticed, everybody's doing commercials again. It's like we took a step forward in time and nobody knew what to do because social media isn't working as well anymore and websites and SEO are not great. So we said, "You know what worked 30 years ago? Commercials, let's try that again."
You have a saying here, Brittany, that I kind of like that I'd like you to unpack. Tell me about elegant communication. What is elegant communication?
Elegant communication, I believe, is the wave of the future. For a long time, communication, especially in marketing, has been about how loud can I yell in hopes that someone will hear me and pay attention to me? How many times can I pop up in someone's feed? How many people who really don't want to hear me can I try and force to hear my message? Elegant communication is about meeting people where they want to be and communicating with them in the way they want to be communicated with.
So you just said basically we're going back to commercials and the elegance of connecting with the client. What's the difference between, let's say, the podcast, the Instagram influencers? In essence, they're all commercials at some point in time by the raw root of the definition. What's kind of changed between how people have been pushing out the signal?
You know, uh, for a very long time, social media was the way to go. And you're right that that's a commercial. It helped some that those commercials were less in time, but there's two problems with social media advertising the way that it's being done. First is that by and large, people are doom scrolling on social media and they get really irritated. You interrupt their doom scrolling with something they didn't ask for, which is the messaging about your company. The second is that we are seeing some migration away from traditional social media platforms, partially because people are realizing it's not good for them, partially because they're very polarizing. But if people aren't on the platforms, it won't matter that you have advertising there. So, and it's really the same when you're on Netflix or Amazon Video or anything else and you're watching your show. The commercial that pops up, typically you don't think, "Wow, they just interrupted my video that I was watching and I was really enjoying it. Now I really want to go check out that brand. They seem to really understand me." Instead, we're annoyed. And reasonably so. We paid for these services and now we're paying twice because we also get to watch commercials while we watch the platform we paid to watch videos on.
Well, he must have been at my house over the weekend going, where's that coming from? That's not part of the show.
Who doesn't want their nature documentary interrupted by an ad for Double Mint gum? I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense.
See, when I'm watching my show on Doublemint gum, it's interrupted by a nature meeting.
That's probably a good documentary. If you're watching a documentary about gum, I might watch it.
We were all supposed to be watching a show, seeing a purse, clicking on the purse, and buying the purse every day, all the time. And that was going to change how we did business and who did business and how seamless it was going to be. I don't think it happened. I'd love to know why you don't think it happened, or is it still coming?
So, in some ways, it has happened. Product placement works. We all watch a movie, and even subconsciously, we notice that the person's drinking Coke, or that in our favorite television show, the star always carries an Hermes bag, or, those kinds of things. We notice those things subconsciously, and we do make some of those connections. But the American consumer, and by and large, I think global consumers in general, are much smarter than they're sometimes given credit for. And we know when we're being marketed to. So the age of sneaky marketing, or I'm just going to put this right here and see what you do with it, is largely lost. We all learn about the things that are being done in psychology classes now. We know what's happening, and we're not looking for it as much. There's also, especially in the luxury market, you talked about bag. You see a bag and you click on it. There's a big shift in luxury market lately. They're seeing massive losses. Some of those companies, people spend their money differently now than they ever have in the past. And I think that's likely to continue. Our values have shifted, our thoughts have shifted, and cause-based marketing even was really big for a while there. And there's even been some shift in that because people ended up feeling lied to. And when people feel lied to, they no longer want to purchase from you. So now, I believe the future of marketing is authenticity and transparency, and saying, we do this thing. Here's why we do this thing. Here's as much information as possible about why we make our specific kind of kefir, or make these kinds of bags or shoes, or why you should shop with us. People find it refreshing when they can purchase with honesty. And I believe that's the wave of the future.
Another element of marketing sometimes is I can buy something online, I get it, and it'll get shipped to me. But at some point in time, unless of course it's a SaaS software, I get to touch and feel it. So when I buy a certain phone from a certain company, the box feels super smooth, right? It's all tactile, sensitive to making me appreciate, and this is luxury and yada yada yada. When you're doing branding, is the whole consumer experience from the point they go over here, please look over here, the the dancing monkeys go by and you go, well, those are interesting monkeys. I like to have that circus, to the point where you're actually now grabbing the peanuts to feed the elephant. Is that something that you do an entire encompassing piece then from when you're doing the branding? Or is it just, hi, this logo, this is the color you need to use, this is the shape you need to use, and then it builds from there?
So oftentimes when we help companies, it depends on the company that we work with. I can do a full brand audit because you're absolutely right. Even the weight of a box as you open it matters in a consumer's eyes. But what I would love for companies to understand is marketing doesn't stop once a purchase is made. Once someone has bought something from you and you had the right logo and you had the right coloring and you had the right messaging, and they opened the box and they felt really good about it, marketing hasn't stopped, because what makes you the most money is a loyal customer who comes back to you over and over again because they love your product. They love your business so much that they'll purchase from you over and over again. That's why honesty is important in marketing, because once I've opened that phone and I've started to use it and I got past the initial rush of, like, when I turn it on and it says hello on the screen and the pretty tone plays, right? Now the phone has to work. It has to work when I'm driving in traffic. It has to work when I'm at home. If the voice activation doesn't work, if the buttons are ridiculous, if it breaks 3 months in, well, now I have a problem. I marketed something that wasn't realistic. I told people, this is a beautiful phone. It's luxury. It'll last you forever. You're going to love your experience. And then they didn't. So much of marketing, people think about it as all happening before a purchase, and there's some truth to that. Do you want to attract people to your brand? Like, of course you do. Color psychology and shape psychology and all of that plays a massive role. But much of what happens is the way that you engage with your customer after the purchase is made really welds those ties together and brings them back again and again. And we all know the customer that you have way better than the customer that you're hoping to get. The customer that you have is what's bringing you in the dollars.
It's interesting because, and I get it. Product works, you're happy. You tend to either, if it's consumable and was really good, you'll go back for more, right? That makes good sense. In the capture of the audience, sometimes there's a whole psychology on, let's say, the shape of the
Yes.
container. And beyond the haptics of the touch, the feel, the look of it. Someone was pointing out long, elegant bottles tend to convey the thought that this is high end as opposed to short and squat. Is that so? That it's kind of like not being cagey, but it's also like, this is elegance, right? So this must be prime. And someone was mentioning another podcast where someone was talking about, the actual quality of something. It can be here mid range, but if presented right, it's perceived as high end. Is that? Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just nodding in agreement. Yes, absolutely. There's a bathtub curve always in how much something is worth and how much people are willing to pay for it. Uh, and like you said, you get the box right from, let's say, Apple, because I have an Apple phone and I'm an Apple person. You get it, and the box is heavy. It's actually weighted a little bit. It's nice and thick cardboard, right? It slides out really easily. Everything's packaged really beautifully inside. Um, that there's this whole clean white experience of engaging with it. You pull it out, it feels good in your hand. It's nice and smooth. Yes, and that's a huge component of the marketing. If I purchase an expensive bottle of perfume, I expect that it will come in a very specific kind of box where the bottle slides right into a little slot that's cut out for it. It will go in a pretty bag, and the person will put tissue paper inside the bag. Maybe they'll spray the perfume on it from a sample before they put it in the bag. Presentation is a huge part of marketing. It's why they stage homes in like realtors, right? Because if I'm going to buy a really nice home, I want to see how a really lovely couch might look in it. Where if I'm just going in to tour, say, a starter apartment, probably it's not staged in a really lovely way, right? Because what I'm looking for is different. Presentation is a huge part of what happens in marketing. And there's lots of things we can do. There was a study done within the last 6 years where they just put a QR code on milk. Nothing else, they just put a QR code on it, and people's happiness with the milk went up by something like 80% because they felt like the company was being more transparent with them. Whether they scanned the code or not, they were really happy just to see the presentation that there was a QR code on their milk. So presentation matters. It's not the only thing, but you're absolutely right that it matters.
So everyone knows about the dot-com startup that dropped $5 million on a football ad and they went bankrupt. Why don't you tell us about how a startup can budget wisely and get a good ROI?
Largely, that depends on the startup. In my opinion, one of the best things that you can do is be talking to the people you want to purchase from you. You really need to know and understand your client. Good ideas die every day. It doesn't matter how good your idea is if you're not speaking appropriately to people. So, a good portion of, in my opinion, of your ROI is going to be really sitting with your IC, knowing and understanding them, knowing how they want the product delivered to them, as we just talked about, presentation, knowing how they're going to use it, knowing why they're going to use it, understanding their price point. Once you've done that, and you're a startup, a marketing budget in tech is always a really difficult thing. In fact, a CMO for a tech company, I think on average, lasts something like 18 months. Very, very short lifespan because people get so frustrated with the amount of money that goes into marketing. Some of the things I believe you can do is to place money in places where you can actually get meaningful analytics. So social media is great, but so much of it is vanity metrics. They're like, how many people could have seen my ad because they scrolled past it? Does that really matter? I know we say 7 to 8 touches before someone engages, but there's really not a great way of doing that. Websites will handle some of that, but how you're handling information afterward and if clients can get to you matters more than some of that initial touch kind of thing. The best thing you can do, always the best ROI, and it's going to sound like I'm on a soapbox and I'm returning to the same things over and over again, is find your ideal clients and then do everything you can to hold on to them. Those have the highest ROI for you. It's not the new people coming in, it's the people who return to you over and over again. Word of mouth and people who believe in you is significantly more valuable than anything else you can do. After that, I would tell people to, and obviously our software is a big thing for me. We promise a large ROI, and that is speaking to people through specialized QR codes. But whether you use my product or someone else's, make sure that you have a way of understanding how people are using your product, whether that's through social listening or interviews with people who are using it. The worst thing that can happen to you is that someone buys your product, uses it inappropriately, and then tells everyone how crappy their experience was with you. So make sure that your consumers aren't just buying from you, but they are informed consumers who know exactly what to do and how to engage with your product so they fall in love with it.
It's interesting that what you've just mentioned. There was a company one time, and they were using a CRM platform, pretty robust, enterprise level. And the someone was going, use product X, and does anybody know how to resolve this? I'm running into an issue, right? And it's like an open forum. And actually, what happened was the CRM goes, it monitors these feeds and goes, I see something over here. And a service rep got online and said, oh, the best way to deal with this is this. In other words, like a Q&A, except
Mhm.
the question got posted and they actually, they reached out to manage it. A little pricey because the platform itself is like 100,000 a year, to open up the door on that platform for that level of sophistication. When you are assuming you don't have that type of budget in the background, but you gotta stand out. You gotta go, listen, I'm making a widget and I got 5 neighbors that make the same dang widget too. And I gotta do something that makes me different, whether it's running shoes or sports shoes. We see that. How do you bring in creativity into this picture, right? Because again, the Super Bowl ads, sometimes you're going, that was funny. It's a one-off, and sometimes they get that pulled afterwards because it was funny, but on the edge, right? How do you get
Mhm.
that creativity in there so that it goes, "Ta-da"?
Creativity it's a vital thing and how you're going to use it varies. So, one of my favorite actually as we're talking Super Bowl ads, I don't know if you remember the year that It's a Tide ad was on Super Bowl. So basically Tide bought a few very short slots during the Super Bowl, and they would say things like, "If it's got dirt in it, it's a Tide ad." Right? Or if it's got sweat in it, it's a Tide ad. So what it did was get incredibly creative and make everybody think Tide every time they saw a commercial on the Super Bowl, even though they did not invest the kind of money to own all of the slots for the Super Bowl. Suddenly every ad was an ad for the Super Bowl. Creativity is vitally important because you're right, you have to stand out. Lots of ways to do that. And again, the first is I would say by knowing your customer. So Dollar Shave Club did really funny videos. They drew people in, they were viral, there was crazy stuff going on in the background. Genius. That said, I would not market designer shoes the same way that that was done. Um, It was genius, but it was genius because they knew exactly who their customer was. Their customer was busy, probably middle class, scrolling through these videos at a very specific time of day, and they wanted to be spoken to in this very specific way. They knew everything about their customer, and then they did these trimmed down, fun, quirky ads that were like, "Hey, you're busy. I'm just going to tell you, our razors are really good and you should buy them from us while there's like circus acrobats in the background or whatever. Creativity is pivotal. Well-informed creativity is maybe one of the best things that you can have on your team. Really pairing marketing and sales together in such a way that they communicate and love each other rather than that they hate each other, which is kind of the age-old dilemma that marketing hates sales and sales hates marketing. You're winning as a company when your teams love each other and they communicate well. Everybody knows exactly who you're speaking to. And now the fun part with all the creativity gets to come out. And whether that's um, your messaging or most people, I think right now are trying to do it with influencers. It's like, oh, you got corporate Natalie. Well, I got corporate brother. And now let's just go head to head. That's not true creativity. True creativity happens when talented teams come together, really understand your product, really understand your client, and then do something meaningful with that.
Is there like a library or resource that sits out there going, this pocket of people tend to open their emails or their social media at 2 in the afternoon on Fridays, but not Thursdays. Thursdays it's at 11 a.m. Is there a library that says, hi, this is kind of the herd behavior that transpires, different groupings. Whether you're a teenager, right? What drives you happiness is different than when you're 50 years old or 60 years old. A good scotch is a good scotch, but it's not good for someone who's underage.
Right, absolutely. And yes, there are many libraries out there that will do that for you. Marketing psychology is what I initially got my degree in. Most of those libraries are behind a paywall, but this is what's really interesting about AI. AI will do a lot of that for you for free or nearly free right now. You can ask questions. Make sure when you do it that you ask for sources and that you check the sources because AI likes to be very knowledgeable whether it actually did the research or not. So always double check. But yes, and those kinds of demographics can change based on geolocation. They can change based on the wealth and the of the people that you're speaking to. They can change obviously based on you'll speak differently to people in Canada and the US than you will to people in Dubai. So being really thoughtful about what you do is important. Yes, there's all kinds of things out there. Some charge hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. But again, AI is $20 a month. It has a lot of the same kinds of knowledge. Work on your prompt craft so that you're giving it really good information to start with. But especially for startups where ROI is so important and your dollar really matters, use AI for some of that research.
I think it's fairly clear now that artificial intelligence, AI, has increased the noise out there. But I talk to specialists that say when we use AI, we use our alchemy to cut through the noise to give you exactly what you need. Tell me about that sorcerer's apprentice robe. Tell me about your alchemy.
So I The biggest problem with AI, and people talk about this a lot, is it does allow people to be lazy. That's absolutely true. But the people who are being lazy were already being lazy. So that creativity that we were talking about just a moment ago, when you utilize your creativity with the way that you use AI, all of a sudden it's a different kind of tool. Um, and it works that way, I think, with most things in life. When we're a little bit educated on how to use it, we use it differently, right? But there's a big difference between the prompts. So one of the number one things that AI is being used for right now is like sort of self therapy. If I want to do that, there's a big difference between the question, "Tell me what's wrong with me," right? The prompt that says, I've been noticing this about myself. Please act as a counselor with 35 years of experience and tell me why this is likely happening and what I can do to change my thought patterns. But really, using the tool at your fingertips. So instead of saying, ChatGPT, I'm bored and I really don't feel like thinking today, write me a post for LinkedIn. You can say, AI. right? Whatever, if you're using Claude or, whatever you're using. This specific thing has been on my mind a lot lately. Here are some of my thoughts on it. What I would love for you to do is to help me put this together in a way that feels concise and brief and will resonate with the people that I'm speaking to, which happen to be professionals between the ages of 35 and 55 who probably speak English and feed it some of your demographics. That's not alchemy, that's science. That's exactness with a touch of creativity. So when I love that you called it alchemy. That's my favorite. But I think anytime someone looks at something and goes, "How did you do that?" It's alchemy. And when we see behind the curtains, all of a sudden it's like it's actually really not. It's a little hard work and a different spin on things. So if there was one thing I could tell people who want to utilize AI, fantastic. AI is absolutely the future. We don't have a choice now. It's out of the box. Make sure you know how to use it well. Train yourself on it, play with it, be scared enough of it that you don't feed it your social security number. Like, use it and use it every day and get better at it all the time.
So we're talking about setting up brands, etc. But you also have another element of your business and deals with contracts and the strategies behind that. Where does that fit in? Is that the strategy of negotiation with you or with suppliers or with who? Where does that come in?
So that contracts came in the sort of the third or fourth year of our startup. And what we realized was uh, these small businesses that are just getting going, sometimes what they need is just to be connected with the right person. So, for instance, at one point we had um, and going back into luxury, we had a shoe designer out of Italy who had this incredible patent on how to support your foot so that women could wear high heels all day without the pain that usually comes with that. Um, he flew us to Italy, we toured his factory, made sure he was the real deal, and we started helping him do some of his messaging and marketing because he, believe it or not, is this crazy philosopher who has all these beautiful ideas behind life, and he has, like, books and books worth of his insight that he wanted squeezed into this brand in a way that was still coherent. And you could sit at this man's feet and learn all kinds of things about life, but in the end, he needed to sell shoes. So we talked with him about all of those things, but one of the things we ended up doing was helping to broker some initial contracts with people in Dubai, which is where there's a significant amount of money. And there's all of these, people who are willing to drop thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on shoes. All he needed was that connection, and then he took it from there. Contracts are one of the things that we got involved with because we realized as we were traveling the world, we were meeting all kinds of meaningful people in all of these crazy different places that didn't seem to be connected until you started looking at what happens when you connect people to other people. And that, in my opinion, is where real alchemy happens. When when people get connected to other people and now all of a sudden there's something present in the world or a new opportunity that wasn't there before, it's magic. And so for me, those kinds of negotiations are less about, and don't get me wrong, I love listening to the FBI negotiators who write their books and talk about, how to bag people up against the wall and get them to do what you really want them to do. But I find that's often not necessary because magic happens when you put incredible people in a room together or on a Zoom call together. People want to work with each other by and large. People want to learn about each other and they meet other people who are in the same magical realm and they're like, what can we do to work together in the future? So it's a lot less about hard negotiation tactics than it is just about introducing people and saying, I have someone that you should meet who has the same level of magic, and I know you guys are going to find a way to work together. And they do. That's one of my favorite parts of my job is creating those connections and getting to watch people do even more amazing things because they met someone else. So as far as where that fits in, it's really just about, like I said, connecting meaningful people to others so that they can make a bigger impact than they would have been able to make themselves.
Good matchmaking then. Nice. Very nice.
We have a lot of fun with it.
You've been at this for a while,
We
and
have.
you didn't start knowing what you know now.
Absolutely accurate. And there's
Do
still
you
so much to learn.
do you have either a train wreck or a super success story? You may not be able to share names, but that will amuse our listeners.
Oh my goodness, there's so many. A couple of things that I would tell people, we've had a few people show up in our path that had other ideas for our company than we did. Those situations get sticky and tricky really, really quickly unless you have some sort of North Star that's guiding you. There is nothing wrong if you started your business because you want to make $10 million, great, then stick with that and do that thing. But there's also something to be said for being flexible. And I tell you this because when we started this business, we started it as really like a 501(c)(3 kind of corporation, which is a nonprofit corporation, where we were going to, because part of our patent lies around sensing the home language of someone's phone and being able to give them information automatically in the home language of their phone. We started this business because my co-founder and I were at a zoo and we saw this teeny tiny little boy, like 4 or 5, trying to translate all the information that he was seeing on signage and that he was listening to a zookeeper give him into Spanish for his parents. And we were like, man, there has got to be a better way than that. And as we looked into it, we found there really wasn't. So we got started on this path very altruistically. Um, and it was something that we loved, and at some point, our board said, "Yeah, that's all fine and good. You have to make money, though." So, what we what we did, right, is we didn't lose sight of our North Star, which is that we wanted to make information accessible to everyone because you can't make the best decisions without the best information. But we realized that our idea could also be used at the same time without setting aside our North Star to make information accessible to everyone, to create digital experiences for everyone, whether they speak English or not. And it was that kind of flexibility and adaptability with our team that means that we made it this far. But we never lost sight of the thing that was most important to us. And I would tell people as they start out, don't lose sight of what's important to you, but be flexible enough to know that it might not be delivered in the way you thought it would. Most of the time, things don't look like what we thought they were going to look like. If someone had told me at 25, this is what I would be doing at 40, I would have thought they were insane. Look at all of the amazing things that my life has become because I was open to something slightly different than what I thought it would be. So use your creativity and your magic and then be a little flexible. Hopefully that was concise enough that it made sense.
You mentioned something when you talked about the young lad and he's translating into Spanish, which which then means, if I push out a product and I'm a global supplier, in other words, I'm not just, local or regional or just within the country. How do you how do you build out several different brands? You build out several different looks, I guess, for lack of better words. Like you might have a core brand logo, but do you approach it differently for every different unique country that you're in, or even region? Because sometimes even regions can be different. The West Coast is definitely different than the East Coast.
It is wildly. And you're right. What you're talking about is localization, which is vitally important. And you do have to study each of those different places. You want to keep brand recognition across everywhere, but it will change slightly. So, for instance, and that's one of the things our platform does. When I talk about language translation, we all know any AI can take what I say in English and put it into Spanish. The problem comes with whether or not what AI has just written in a word for word translation bears any real resemblance to what I was hoping it would mean in another language. And also, things change. So, for instance, our shoe designer friend, right? In Italy, the pictures that are totally appropriate to use for branding are no longer appropriate in the UAE. In fact, some of them are against the law there. So,
It
um,
sounds cheeky.
yes and no. And that's part of the understanding of cultural relevancy versus a word to word translation. So, for instance, in June, I was in Japan. And the way that I speak about myself and what's on my digital business card changes when I'm in Japan. Not because I am lying about myself. I make sure that I am transparent and truthful all the way across the board. But the way that people speak about themselves in business is different in Japan than it is in America. America tends to be a little more egocentric. America tends to be a little more like, hey, hey, look at me. I'm really great. When I go to Japan, I'd speak differently because I am respectful of their culture, because I want to show that I understand them and who they are, and because I want to meet them where they want to be met. So, any brand should be doing that same thing. Sometimes that means a minor tweak in logo. Frequently, that means employing someone who can help you to get your messaging correct. If that's us, wonderful. If it's someone else, great. But make sure that you're saying actually what you think you're saying, because word to word translation generated by our favorite tool, ChatGPT, probably is telling someone something entirely different than what you think. And you can test that pretty easily by feeding something in your home language, translating it to a new language, and then translating it back to the original language and seeing what kinds of changes get made. But most of us have come in contact with that simply by ordering something on Amazon that came from like Taiwan or China and reading the English instructions and having their it it's almost nonsense. It's unless they have invested time in understanding language and nuance and all of those kinds of things. Um, so in answer to your question, that was kind of a long-winded answer. Yes, you should be willing to make changes regionally and definitely culture. Because otherwise, you don't know your clients, you don't know your ICP, you don't know who you're speaking to, and that matters.
When Bernie frames this, he sometimes has expectations. And there's a piece here that talks about jujitsu, and there's talk about discipline and mental flexibility. And I think that's all fantastic and all true. I want to know if you've ever told the customer, I know how to beat you. It's that simple. I am going to hurt you.
I have
That's a different ad. That's a totally different ad. Different
I have
clientele.
never told a client I was going to hurt them. I have once told a client that their marketing was bad. I told them it was bad and that it didn't make sense and that they weren't speaking to the correct people. Like, it's muddled, it's truly horrible. This client had gotten kind of up in arms with me, and I said, "Look, you are allowed to do exactly what you would like. Just so you know, I'm your ICP. I'm a woman between the ages of 35 and 55. This makes no sense. I don't feel like you're talking to me. I feel like you care more about what you have to say than what I think. It's really bad." The only other person that I've ever pestered with my jujitsu skills is my husband. And it was shortly after I started, and he was on his phone and he wasn't paying attention to me. So I just started poking him repeatedly, just like tapping his shoulder. And he's like, "Stop it." And I said, "I don't think you can make me anymore. I think I've learned enough that you can't make me." And he did tap out. I got him in an armbar. I typically do not threaten people. I mostly I do competitive jujitsu because it's very strategic, and I love the idea that me at 5'1" and 110 pounds, if I use just the right strategy, I can stop someone, a man who's 6 foot and 225 pounds, from being able to pin me to the ground or hurt me. I think it's fun.
ICP. I think that was it. Could you unpack that for us? Because we have people in different industries.
Absolutely. An ICP is your ideal client profile. So it's the person that you're really hoping to work with, whether you're a salesperson or they're going to buy your product, your software, your beans, your whatever. Your ICP is the person that you really think you've created your product for.
So business, they're launching out. They're maybe using their own funds. Maybe they left corporate and they're working off their package, and so they're trying to watch the pennies. What's the first thing from a branding perspective a business should do to go, I'm here, ta-da, but do it cost effectively, knowing that they'll have to scale and get
Yeah.
visibility later on.
A website is vitally important, and I will warn that this changes along, if you are a food item, there's different ways that you should be going than if you are a fashion item, than if you are a software. But the most important thing you can do initially is to figure out where your ideal client is and then get some sort of exposure there. LinkedIn is really popular with professionals and for software. If I'm a lifestyle brand, I'm likely going to be on Instagram and Facebook. If I am a food brand, potentially the best place for me to be is at trade shows. But also, if I can't afford a trade show immediately, maybe the best place for me to be is at a farmer's market. Just anywhere that I can start getting information from the people I'm selling to about what I have, what's they love most about it, and what needs to change in order to make it as successful as possible. When we talk about scaling, the most important thing you can do is hold on to the customers that you have as you gain new customers. So, do build a website for SEO. I would always encourage people to then work with vision. There's no one exactly like us, but there are places where you can do a QR code. The reason that's important is because QR codes on a product give people the opportunity, give you really the opportunity to collect analytics based on when people are actually engaging with your product versus just engaging with you as sort of a brand, like up in the clouds, like they're watching my videos on Instagram. What happens when they pick up your product and actually engage with your product? There's a huge ROI there. Other things, I could go on for days and days. If you're a software, really look into whether or not you need to bring your dev in-house or you can outsource that. Man, this is the kind of thing that I would tell people, if this is something you wanna talk about, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it because the approach is so different for whatever vertical you're applying it to. Uh, there's 1,000 different ways to get noticed. What you want is something, to your point earlier, Bernie, creative and different that will stick out to people, but not intrusive. Something that says, I understand who you are. Come hang out with me. Check out my product. We're going to have a lot of fun together.
I see so many platforms out there, from LinkedIn to Pinterest. How do you develop the most comprehensive brand so that you have a theme that resonates across platforms without being tone deaf?
You don't. That sounds weird, but this is what I'm saying. Not every platform is for everyone. You can sink your dollars into every single platform if you really want, but that still means you don't know your ICP. You're like, I don't know who we're talking to, so I'm just going to cast a wide net and hope that we catch the fish that we're trying for. Know your customer well enough to know what platforms matter to them and be there. But don't waste a bunch of dollars being on Pinterest if it doesn't make sense to you. Maybe you don't need to be on Mastodon or Blue Sky or Facebook. Like, it just, do enough research to know where it makes sense for your brand to appear and where it's totally fine if you don't have a voice. You don't need to be everywhere. And that's dangerous. Like, flattening yourself out and making yourself wide and shallow is not going to help your company.
So, what's the most powerful question a founder should ask themselves before they do a rebrand or even build a brand?
Who asked for the solution that I built? Because that will help you understand who you need to talk to. It will also help you, and this is a problem in the world right now. There are all kinds of solutions out there that nobody asked for. And I know that sounds funny. One of my favorite examples is the banana slicer that's on Amazon. It's a little plastic thing and you push it over the banana and it perfectly cuts your banana. Who is that for? Like, why? Why was this created? And I feel like uh, those kinds of things happen a lot. We answer questions nobody's asking, and then we take it to market and we're confused why it's not selling. Well, because it's not a problem anyone cares about. So the first thing
I might have a banana that's tough, though. Yeah.
you might, and maybe that's when you get out the steak knife instead of the butter knife to cut it up. I don't know. And people buy it mostly as a gag gift, but really as a founder, like, whose question am I answering? Because now I know who to talk to, why to talk to them, where to invest my dollars, all of those kinds of things. If I'm wrong, it's dangerous. So make sure you know whose question you're answering.
You brought me back to the 80s where I was supposed to use the same knife for cutting shoes and tomatoes. Thank you. That is nice to be in this century. So, where do you tend to like to do the most business geographically? And if this resonates, how do we get a hold of you?
We, in the last 2 years, we've been in 8 countries. I found that we really love, there's a few. We love the way business is done in Japan. It does take extra time to navigate business in Japan. We love the warmth of business in South America, particularly in Brazil and Argentina. And we have just actually opened up conversations in Canada, and we're finding that we really love that. It's a little bit of a difficult landscape right now because some of the taste that current politics have left in the mouths of other people can make it difficult. But any place that is warm and excited about new ideas has been a place that we have loved to be. And if you want to talk to me, our website is Vision with 3 eyes because we see what they don't. And you can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm Brittany A. Hansen, and I make a point to always respond to people in my inbox, even if it's just a few brief words. I would love to speak to you. So please do reach out to me.
I want to say thank you to Brittany, my co host Wayne, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. Appreciate your time today. So, Brittany helps businesses cut through the noise with branding and strategy, connections, conversions, and scaling so to grow your business. She loves taking that scattered messages and bring it into an elegant campaign. And elegant is really key because that means there's flow to it. And she once coached a small startup who muddled messaging, nearly sank their launch. And you know what? That's the key. You don't want to be sinking. You want to be floating and growing. All right. So if this resonates with you, connect with Brittany and take the next step forward, a brand that truly lands.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.